definitely on the road to recovery, and this stage is about championing them and their voices. So without further ado, I am going to welcome two great stalwarts of the environmental movement. It is such an honor and a pleasure. Wanjira Mathai, please come up here. And ladies and gentlemen, give her a huge round of applause. All the way from Kenya. I say all the way from Kenya. We're on your beautiful continent. This is so exciting. A champion for women, for young people, for social and environmental change. We can't wait to hear your voice here today. Thank you so much. And then Polman, let's have you up here as well, sir, please. A business leader, a campaigner, co-author of Net Positive. He really needs very little introduction. And now I'm going to hand over to these two great people, because they've got three even greater young people to introduce to us all today. Take it away.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction. And what a venue. This is probably the most beautiful one. And I saw these young people receiving the torch. Bravo, that was beautiful. That is what action is about. So actually, I'm going to introduce two amazing women who many of you may know, and if you don't, you will today. It is so rare that you meet people whose lives are about action. Liz Wathuti is one of those people. Elizabeth, I met on a jury. She was up for an award, and we could only give that award to one person. But after meeting her, we gave it to two. She could not be missed. She's an activist. She's an environmentalist. But more than that, she's about action. She sees a problem, she solves it. That's how I met her. She's part of the Green Movement in Kenya. She's founder of an organization called the Green Generation Initiative, where she works with kids to actually get them to appreciate and plant trees. But she doesn't do it from the sidelines. She's right in there with them. I love this young woman, Liz Wathuti. And next, I'm going to introduce another young woman. I myself, as a child, was a scout. I was a girl guide, and then I was a ranger. I think I had the most fun in my youth in this movement. Gracia Basena is a youth scout representative. She's brilliant. She's also about action. The minute I met her, the thing she said to me was, "What do you think about tourism?" She didn't just ask that to make small talk. She's also involved in sustainable tourism. And we had a really good conversation about the role of tourism in driving conservation, in driving change. Gracia herself, from Mexico, is actually a lifelong youth activist herself. And she is part of the national chapter of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, one of the movements that, of course, understands that trees and forests are not just about the trees themselves, the biodiversity within, and all of the ecosystem services that we get. I cannot wait to hear more about you. Welcome. Welcome, Gracia. Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Wanjira, and good morning, everybody. You know, I was just thinking how amazing it is what you guys did to bike and to run and to sail from Glasgow to here in Sharm el Sheikh. But I couldn't hesitate to think that you guys are also incredibly lucky that this year's COP is in Sharm el Sheikh. Think if it would have been in New Zealand or Australia, you'd still be biking. You'd still be running and you'd still be sailing. But this is an incredible effort that you're doing. It shows you the power that you have to actually probably exceed your own expectations and collectively achieve something that nobody has done before. So congratulations for doing that. Wanjira has already mentioned the two wonderful other panel members, and I have the pleasure to introduce Alejandro Day. Alejandro came actually in 2014 from Venezuela to Colombia. It's one of these unfortunate situations again in Latin America and in many other parts of the world where people have to move because of political incompetence, if I may call it that way, and are being forced to be displaced. Climate change will probably be the biggest driver of displacement of people. We reckon that by 2050 alone, at the current trajectory, here in Egypt already 2 degrees warmer than at the beginning of this century because of climate change. But at the middle of the century, we could have over 1 billion people roaming around the world as a result of climate change. I don't want to be part of that. I know you don't want to be part of that. That's why we're here. I also know Alejandro doesn't want to be part of that. He is the founder of the right to disobey. What is incredibly important, and we'll talk that in a minute, is the voices of the youth. So do we have the right to speak up and fight for air pollution? Do we have the right to speak up and fight for refugee rights? Do we have the right in the first place to have peaceful mobilizations? These are all the things that Alejandro is fighting for, and that makes him such a wonderful human being. Alejandro, join us. How do we do this? I think we just have a conversation first. Okay. Is that what you want to do?
Hello, 1, 2, 3. Are these working?
This one.
Oh, this one is working.
So I think that
Maybe we'll start off, Paul, by just asking a question. I'm often struck by the fact that we have been talking about hope and that we have to keep hope alive, because we do. And part of the idea of Extreme Hangout is that we have to see what good is happening. I wonder what our young leaders are optimistic about. In these 2 weeks, what makes you optimistic?
For me, what makes me optimistic is seeing the energy in the youth movement. I was just talking about what's happening inside at the youth pavilion, where so many young people are feeling so determined to actually make the leaders hear us, because we have been in these COPs before. This is like the 27th COP, and we know how many promises and pledges and commitments are made in there, but then when we get back home, we know that most of these, and at some point even all of them, are not fulfilled. And it's a pattern that really worries so many people, so many young people, because we know how huge the problem is. Like, we know how huge the crisis is. We see the challenges back at home, but then the scale and the speed that the action needs to be done by the leaders is not where it's supposed to be. So that's the biggest problem. It's not about what's going on, but it's the fact that even when that much is going on, not much is being done to address the problem. But then seeing the fact that there's so much to fight for right now. I mean, people whose lives and livelihoods are at stake with this crisis, and the fact that so many young people are already showing what real climate action looks like, because they're not only telling the leaders what to do, but all of them are leading initiatives, and really great initiatives back at home, which is what we should be seeing at the COP. So for me, that's one thing that really keeps me optimistic, that we are the people that are going to make that change happen.
Gracia, what do you want to get out of the COP?
Good question. I think in terms of like general, I would like to see I would like to see financial and political will of countries going back their home and really implement what they are saying here. Because at the end of the day, if there is no do after the blah, 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 it doesn't matter, we are here. So it's all about implementation on the ground, and us as young people and civil society, I think it's really important that we are able to take back what we learn here and take it back to the community. Because otherwise, if we don't work in the ground with the people, with our friends, with our family members, then this doesn't matter. So what it really matters is that we do it back home. And in terms of more like technical or political perspective, I am part of the ACE working group, which stands for Action for Climate Empowerment, which is part of the YUNGO, which is the youth constituency to the UNFCCC. And we have some proposals as well, and one of them would be to really close the financial gap between the ACE founders and project doers. So somehow that there is like a place or like a platform where they can meet and exchange resources and knowledge together to build projects that have impact on the ground.
And the being heavily involved in the Girl Scouts, what are you doing specifically with them? Because that's an incredible movement,
Yeah.
close to nature.
Thank you. Well, so here in I am a scout. I am a youth representative of the World Organization of the Scout Movement, and nature is our alive laboratory. This is where we do activities, and we basically use nature to provide non-formal education, non-formal environmental education. So for us, it's really relevant that people are able to learn to understand nature, that are really related to nature and are able to get the skills and the capabilities to be able to go back and deliver projects together with the local communities, right? So it's also this perspective on working on the ground together. It's not like I'm telling you what I think you need, but let's find out together what we need together, and with the skills that I have acquired, we do it together.
I was reading that 92% of people don't leave their homes or offices or cities. And what study after study shows is that if you have an opportunity to be in contact with nature, you're more inclined to take actions as well on things like climate change, etc. So
Yeah,
incredibly important what you're doing.
yeah.
So same question.
What do you want to get out?
Is this working? No. Is this working? Yes, this is working. Actually, first question to the audience. Can you raise your hand if this is your first cup? Oh my God, I'm not the only one. Yes. I'm learning how to navigate this. But I think what I'm hopeful for is you and me, meaning people that are actually trying to get involved with it and they don't really know how to. Because that is what this is about. I mean, definitely there's a pathway for global leaders to make sure that we fulfill our promises, to get to the Paris Agreement. But there's also so much going on the ground. I come from Latin America, as Grecia, from Venezuela / Colombia. We're never involved in these situations. Like I always saw people going to COP like so far away. But if you ask me, like how many people we have mobilized in our country, we have mobilized thousands. Does that matter for the climate goals? Of course that does matter. I mean, that's what I'm hopeful for, because I see you all here and like, they're so gonna go back home and just convince so many people to join the climate movement, and that's amazing. And in my case, I advocate for something specific, which I hope I will see more in this COP, that is air pollution, or the opposite, clean air. I don't know if any of you were in Cairo before this. Yeah, I'm asthmatic, and I almost died, like, because it's so air polluted. Cairo is a very air polluted city. I had to run here, and I was so worried that I got an asthma attack on my way here. I was like, you're not gonna get that, you're not gonna do that. But the thing is that those situations, what make you believe is that you're wrong for being who you are. So I'm the one to blame because I have asthma, so it's my fault. Actually, it's not. There's something called air pollution that makes me sick, and that makes me more likely to get non-communicable diseases. And the truth is, and what people are not talking about in COP, is that climate change also causes air pollution. And where is that in the agenda? Just in Colombia, every 50 minutes a person dies of air pollution. 7 million people die every year due to air pollution. And I understand so much that we need to talk about mitigation and loss and damage, but we also need to talk about the thing that is killing us. If I can make young people aware of making air pollution part of your agenda, I will leave COP really happy.
Very good. And it's again the poor people that suffer, the ones that live closer to the coal plants or to the highways, and the bearing the brunt of climate change, again, once more, is the same with air pollution. What question do you want to ask to Wanjira? You guys.
Oh, wow.
A unique
Yes.
opportunity. You have 5 seconds to be in agreement.
And then we can have 5 seconds to get this thing working. Can you hear me?
Is it working?
I think so.
What didn't work and what is changing. Yes. That was some agreement.
Yes, so we just, slightly discussing around what we see happening and the fact that right now we are seeing a lot of movements from young people and civil society organizations, but same things every time. We still keep insisting that we want to see action and not words. So why are things not changing? 27 years down the line, so many conferences. We are living at a time when there's so much science, so much information, a lot of realities on climate change, but still it seems like things are not happening. What's your perspective on that, and why do you think things are not changing?
That's a good question. I think all of us are asking ourselves that question. There's certainly a lack of accountability. Can you hear me? Apparently it's working. It's just not working up here. Okay. So I think there's a general lack of accountability. So what we need to ask, the question is, how do we get accountability? Because I've heard, especially young people, challenge leaders. I heard Vanessa ask the leaders, thumbs up if you think Africans or people in the vulnerable South deserve, she used the word deserve, our support. Thumbs up, all ministers. She told them, put it up, it was higher. How many of you will make a commitment to finance for loss and damage? There was not one hand up, not one thumb up. So there's no commitment. We talk, but there's no action that follows. So I think it's not so much a crisis in commitment and all of that. It is actually a crisis in empathy. One of the speeches you gave, Liz, was about opening your hearts. The reason that speech resonated is because there is a genuine crisis in empathy. People just have a hard time putting themselves in the shoes of somebody who is going through untold suffering. And if you don't feel a sense of empathy, it's very difficult to mobilize. You feel a sense of empathy because you're proximal to the issue. Can you imagine how much farther the chief negotiator of the European Union is from these issues? He could not be farther. And so it takes a lot more to get that person to feel the empathy. Paul here spent so much time in Kenya. The minute I meet Paul, we talk about Kenya. So anything that happens in Kenya touches him in a way that it doesn't touch someone who has never been. I think we need a new strategy. We need to actually tell some of those leaders to be in those spaces, to feel the pain, to see the pain in much closer proximity. Otherwise, it is an intellectual exercise.
I agree.
Very good. We'll move to the youth, if I may, and the specific role that the youth have to play. I had a opportunity at One Young World, where Alejandro is also part of. One Young World is a wonderful movement where every year about 3,000 young people get together and share what they do to change systems. At that time, I had the pleasure to introduce someone who was working in Louisiana, where the state doesn't care about recycling. Some people don't believe in climate change there. This is the South in the United States. She herself put in a recycling system. Another person in Tahiti got rid of single-use plastics. So these are enormous efforts that are happening because of people. And it's very energizing to see 3,000 of them together, because you multiply it and you see the difference that young people can make. I talked at that time about a few things. In the first one, and I think Wanjira talked about it already, we don't see the right values in many of all the leaders that are in positions to make the decisions. So how can we fight for the right values? The values to make your voices heard. The values of dignity and respect for everybody. The value of equity. The value of compassion or empathy. We need to fight for that. And that is one of the things that I think the young people can do enormously well. The second thing is set the ambitions. Don't compromise. We know what science tells us to do. We need to be ambitious in the requests that we have, in line with science, not just make promises we can get away with. And the third thing, I think, this is the first time that the young population, like yourselves, actually in most of the countries has now the majority of the voting voices. It used to be the millennials, the baby boomers, to which we belong. But now it's the millennials and the Gen Zs. It will be interesting to see today what happens in the United States if they go to the polls. But make your voices heard. Be part of that political process so that we get the right leaders in that represent your future, not the leaders that want to hang on to the past. So the question here to our young leaders is, where do you think you, to be fully exploiting your full potential to be activists, what do you need from people like us to make it happen?
You want to start?
You want to start, Liz, or you want to start?
Yeah, I can go first. That's a tough question for. First, thanks to the One Young World community for being part of us here as well. I actually connect a lot with the issue of the values, but I always try to think it as principles, values taken into action. And I think what we're seeing here, and what particularly coming from Venezuela, what I see a lot is a lot of leaders without principles, or at least not with the principles that we want. I think we have a principle or a commitment to care for one another. And because we care, we will make sure that we have a planet to live, or that we're not polluting the world as we're polluting it now. Because some people, for example, me or millions that have non-communicable diseases or respiratory diseases, are just not going to be able to run, to walk, to do whatever they want because the world is polluted. And so thinking about what I think young people need and what we need actually is new narratives. I think, I don't want to sound pessimist saying this, but I think the narrative failed a bit, and I think we need a new one. And I think we're in the middle of that tipping point, which is gonna get more uncomfortable. So you saw what we're seeing with the painters, and everyone is like, oh, this is awful, and it's like, yeah, but you're talking about it. So I think we do need to get a bit more uncomfortable. Also, making sure that goes hand in hand with public policy work. But Paul said it, I created an organization called The Right to Disobey. I think we need to disobey more. I think if I have been there, if I were the people that did the painting, I would have painted on black the fountains to say that's what are we drinking right now. Saying that, what I mean is we need new narratives. In order to get new narratives, we need new symbols. Who are the people that are going to create those symbols? Young people. And symbols for what? To make sure we change those principles. And I don't think we can let young leaders decide what is going to be the narrative. I think we need to build a new one. And if they're on it, okay. If they're not, they're going to be. Because we are going to be the ones that are going to elect them. And I think sometimes we need to just realize that we are not going to count with some of them. If Trump is elected, are we count with him? No. Are we going to keep working? Yes. Are we going to keep demanding people? Yes. So more uncomfortable, a little bit more disobedience.
I'd say you have to work a little bit harder if he gets elected again.
Yes, no, but making sure that we're making the right people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Wow. Great answer. I believe, firstly, together with your generation and our generation, it's really putting respect in between, the value of respect in between our relationship with nature. And we really need to understand we are nature. It's not that something that we go outside of our houses and it's there. It's that we need support from nature. I mean, the web of life is based on nature, and we need the resources and the ecosystems and everything. Right? So if we start putting respect in the middle of our relationships, as we do with other humans, we should do it as well with nature. Also, I think it is important that we start creating spaces for education, but more like non-formal education, where people can learn in a diverse ways, right? Like not you go to school and it's everything the same and you all have to learn the same. It's about really experiencing and make it personal to your feelings, to your family members, so you really start taking it part of yourself. And this is something we do in scouting, actually. Through different types of activities, we start or support with our sets of values, so young people can develop different skills and competencies, so then in different ways, so then they can develop different actions. So if we don't move to really make it part of our personal feelings and thinking, which it happens when you experience different things outside, then we cannot do anything else, because then we won't care, because it's something that it's not affecting me and I don't see it or I don't feel it, right? And I think we need a lot of intergenerational dialogue as well. I still, some of the ways we were raised, or the opportunities we used to have, it's completely different to the ones you had. So if we are not able to work together and really like put what we're good in, like for actions, then we won't be able to do anything, because at the end, I mean, you guys are gonna be still here half of our lives, and then we will take over and a new generation will come. So if we don't learn how to work together and really like start changing the way we live together, this won't work. Yeah, so, yeah.
So I look at issues on environmental protection and addressing the climate crisis as a moral responsibility before we even think about what duty is imposed upon everyone, the leaders and ourselves and every person, because this is a global crisis that requires us from every sector to actually take action. And I think we need a lot of love and compassion around us, and because what we have failed to do is we've failed to come together for the good of humanity. When issues that concern people's lives and livelihoods are at stake, I think it calls for us to put so many differences aside, interests aside, and then come together and say this is what we need to do for the good of humanity. And it's in the same way that you've mentioned about nature, that you really protect what you love. If you're so much close to what surrounds you, and like for me, I grew up in the most forested region in Kenya, and I think as a child, the main memories that I still hold on to myself is being able to spend so much time around the trees and seeing the clean streams, and also what that meant for me growing up. And I think seeing some of these things also being degraded, the water levels going down, the streams not flowing in the same fast speed anymore, is the first challenge that you identify with. And because you're so connected to this space, then you will see a challenge and you'll want to find a solution. You'll want to use your voice to protect that space because you love it so much. So I think that's really one of the things that we are missing in the world. And that's why in the same way, we see a really big disconnect between what is happening in the inside of the rooms where the negotiations go on. There's a lot of disconnect between what's happening inside there and also what people outside here are asking for, are demanding, and also the realities on the ground. Because there's a disconnect with the realities. And I think this is really the human problems that we talk about, where we need to actually solve it with a human head, human heart, to actually say this is what needs to happen. And in terms of what young people need right now, I think in that case, because we see so many young people, the reason they're stepping up is because they have seen the urgency, they see what's at stake, and in recognition that this is the generation that will have to live longer with consequences of any decision that is made today, of any inaction that's happening right now. And being able to see that is what really gets young people together to want to take that urgent action. So I think we really need to be taken seriously, because I feel until now, I don't think young people have yet to be taken seriously. And this also calls for meaningful and genuine engagement of young people. Right now, I'm at COP27 with about 35 young people from across Africa, and these are young people who are doing really great initiatives back at home. And so at the Wanjira Mathai Foundation, we started the Africa Climate Activist Hub. And I remember one of the first informal meetings we had with the young people, we asked them so many questions. How do you feel? Like, how did it feel in your first COP? And we had so many responses of people feeling lonely, feeling alone, feeling not supported, feeling ignored. All of these things are what young people feel when they are in these spaces. but their voices are equally important, and it is important that they're also acknowledged as equal partners, not like just to tick the box that we have a young person, we have their voice. I think for young people, it goes beyond being able to have also the platform, but also how well their asks and their needs are taken into consideration, even while the decisions are being made, and also how well they are involved in the entire decision-making processes. So I think it's a whole process that it takes to also support and involve young people, but it's really important that also they are shaped by the young people and for the young people, because the young people understand what it takes to actually feel genuinely and meaningfully engaged.
Yeah, I love what Liz said. I just wanted to add that the hub that Liz mentioned, I mean, one of the things that is really important is, and Paul, you know this from your time at Unilever, innovation requires that you give people space, you create the level of comfort that allows innovation to thrive. The solutions we're looking for the issues that we're facing today actually rest in the heads, hands, hearts of young people. And if we don't listen, I think there's you mentioned, Alejandro, intergenerational dialogue, or I think it was you who mentioned, that if we actually genuinely engage in dialogue, there's so much innovation that can come out of that. Ideas that will unlock the blockages that we have at the moment. I sometimes feel like young people are watching us in this circus and wondering, what are they doing? Like, why can't they just move left? But there's no bridge for you to come and sort of say, how about, have you considered this? There's so much of a blind spot in how we are addressing climate change today. And that will require a genuine space created for young people. I'm so excited about this hub. But I can tell you it's extremely difficult to raise money for Liz and the team to raise money for that hub, because not many people genuinely create that bridge and trust that they have the answers, that they have solutions. They can be genuine partners. That's one of the things I think we need to crack through, Paul, with donors, with partners, to say trust them. They brought, if you had told me to bring 40 delegates to COP, I'd be like, I can't manage myself at COP. How am I going to manage 40 delegates? But she did. They did. They're here, 40 of them, organizing, rallying, and making change happen. Congratulations for that, really.
Before we ask you one final question, because we're up against the time limit, so we could sit here the whole day because you're all amazing, and I think we're sort of enjoying it. Are you guys enjoying it? I'll give you a few seconds to think about the final question, but if there's one thing you could change coming out of the COP, what would it be? Just one thing as your final comments. But before I do that, let me just build on Wanjira's comments a little bit. You know, 50% of the world population right now is below 30 years old. That's half the world's population. And the interesting thing is those people are going to be 100% of the population tomorrow. So how do you leverage your voice? I believe personally it's not only demanding a seat at the table, you deserve a seat at the table. And more importantly, you deserve the table in many of the cases, if I may be honest. And we need to insist in everything we do that we do that. But my simple point to you is there are a few things that you need to leverage as much as you can. You know, you are an enormous economic force. The money that you spend combined now on things to live in this world is more than any other group of the population. How many are going into the store and buying a piece of clothing and ask where it comes from? Or how many the people get paid to produce it? Or what it is made of? Or if it is sustainable? Or should we really be buying these clothes? The average young people now have 4 times more clothes at home than 3 decades ago. Part of the problem is this infinite consumption on a finite planet. So use your economic power is a very important thing. The second thing is use your human power. Not only what you see here with our 3 wonderful people on the panel, but you can decide for whom you work, increasingly so. You know, there's a shortage in most of the countries of good people. companies like the one I was working for would love to have the best people in the world. You have to fight for that. But only work for companies that are sincere, that really put their words into action. You know, don't work for companies that just do the greenwashing all the time. We can't afford it anymore. And the last thing is, which you would not be surprised about, is use your political force. We really have to get new leaders. It is a shame that, at least in our short lifetimes, that we are probably at a moment where the political leaders are certainly not something that I would be proud of. It's probably the worst I've seen in my limited life on Earth. We have to get involved in politics. We have to elect the right people that know what needs to be done, that operate under this higher level of empathy and compassion and take care of the global problems first before they take care of their own needs. That is a very important thing. So that's the role that we all have to play. But now we're in the last 3 minutes. That means we have Alejandra, Gracia, and Liz that are going to tell us the one thing that they are going to do so that when we walk out here 2 weeks from now, we're even more hopeful than we are today.
Well, thank you, Paul. That was amazing. Was thinking on the question, and I phrased my answers. I'm a forcibly displaced migrant that happens to be gay from the global south and cares about air pollution. And I'm here. And I think that diversity that I bring to the table, that I also see in you, I think that's what's going to change this COP. Because we need more dialogue, but not between the same people that are always talking between themselves. We need dialogue with youth, indigenous leaders, with gay leaders, even here, with migrants, forcibly displaced migrants and refugees, with everyone. And I think that diversity, it gives me hope, because the result is going to be different if the people on the table are different. And what we bring here is intersectionality. We bring different identities, and I'm hopeful for that.
I think we are young people. We have the skills, we have the competencies, and we have the compromise. So I think all we need is just the chance, the opportunity, the trust to really show what we can do, and we're doing already. And yeah, I think this is what I expect from this space, that there is more young engagement, that we are able to take on the spaces and raise our voice. This is what I'm looking for. So yeah, keep working in team, because we gotta do it.
I think if I was to change one thing outside, I wouldn't change anything. I would just ask people to keep doing what you do. Every young person is trying to make a difference, because those small acts multiplied by millions of us is what is going to make change happen. We need collective action in this space. But if I was to change something inside the COP, I would make it an accountability COP, because what we are lacking is honesty, we are lacking responsibility. So I think the COP should be a space where leaders take responsibility of what they've not done and they were supposed to do. But I think the pattern is people making many announcements and pledging and committing, all those things. But again, we need responsibility of what has not been done. So we are holding them accountable, but they're not taking up responsibility for what they haven't done. So I think it's not yet an accountability COP. Like, it's not yet in that way where we can have leaders stepping forward and saying, this is what we were supposed to achieve, but we have not done it. And I think, yeah, it's like, I would make it an accountability COP to break the pattern of pledges made and not met. Thank you.
Well, that's about all the time we have, clearly. We could have gone on and on, Paul. This was amazing. Thank you, three of you, for your leadership, for your commitment, for your action. And really, to be honest, we would probably not be here, but for the pressure you continue to put. It matters. It makes a difference. Please do not stop. Let's turn it up at this COP27. Thank you.